Welcome in, everyone, to another edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, as always, Tommy Brzee. It is Wednesday, January 8th around here, and we got to start picking these games. We got to pick the Orange Bowl. We got to pick the Cotton Bowl. That is what we will do in the first two segments today. Very, very hard games to pick. The second one a little bit easier, as a lot of people are finding throughout the industry, but at the end of the day, really, really tough games, and frankly, I could see them going any which way. And then in the third segment, I want to take a little bit of a look back. We'll go to the CFP quarterfinal losers. We'll kind of look forward to what Oregon, Georgia, Boise State, and Arizona State are staring down this offseason. Arizona State seems to be in a great spot going into 2025. Then we'll get to the transfer portal updates. It exploded over the last couple of days. Definitely want to get you updated. Georgia continues to roll. Washington gets a huge commitment and a ton more. And then we'll do, to finish it out, we'll end on kind of a somber note. We'll talk about the biggest roadblocks for all these CFP semifinalists and this week's games, as well as in a possible national title. What could possibly get in their way? We talked about the keys to possibly winning. A lot of those will kind of tie in to the roadblocks that we talk about today. But we'll finish the show off with that. But before we jump in, I do want to remind you all we get tons of questions and comments throughout the show, and the best way for you all to get your question on the screen, we can have fun back and forth here, is to use that super chat. At the bottom of the chat on the Sports Network page, you can click that $sign, add any question, comment you like. It'll pop up on the screen, and we can have a fun back and forth here. Would love to have you all on the screen, be able to see y'all's names. Definitely a very fun, interactive experience. Would love that, especially with these picks coming up. Also, before we jump in, just want to give a quick shout out to Snake57 on the YouTube page. Did give me an answer for that NDSU backup quarterback that Anthony was talking about yesterday, Cole Payton. It seems to be the heir apparent to Cam Miller. There was Nathan Hayes is another name to watch, which another commenter gave me. So very much appreciate everyone commenting on that. Very much appreciate everyone watching that video. Really exploded overnight. So very much appreciate that. Love that the FCS is getting the love that it very much deserves. But Cole Payton might just be taking over at NDSU, and we'll see if he can take over that dynasty that they're building up there. But we got to talk about the games, guys. We got to jump into these, and they're insane. Two games that I think have elite talent all over the field on both sides. Two games that have kind of interesting styled matchups between these two teams. And I think this one might be the most interesting of the bunch because they're pretty similar. These two teams, in a lot of different ways. Obviously, you have the quarterbacks that are very, very talented, kind of different skill sets. You know, Drew Aller, a little bit more of a stand back and pass guy. Riley Leonard, obviously, that more running threat, a little bit more of that general of the offense rather than the outright playmaker. I don't want to say that. A little bit more of a general of the offense, can make plays with his legs, that type of thing. And then you have these duo of running backs on both sides that are just absolute nightmares to deal with. Going to be incredible to watch this one unfold. And the biggest thing to know about this one, these teams have a little bit of history. They have met 19 times in their history. It is even at 9-1. So they did get one tie in there. They've won 9 times each. And these two teams haven't been on the mountaintop since 1986 and since 1984. And there was a very, very special game back in 1980 that Al Golden was actually on the Penn State side for, the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame. So a lot of different stuff going into this game, a lot of different history, even when you come up to the head coaches or the coordinators of this game. But a lot of different things going into this one. Obviously, the head coaches trying to break through for the very first time in their career. Marcus Freeman has the gripe of you lost to Marshall, you lost to NIU. James Franklin has the gripe of you can't win the big game, you can't beat Ohio State or Michigan or any of the big time guys you need to. This is the moment where a lot of that changes. Now, Marcus Freeman, I would argue, has already changed his way, or the way he's viewed by a lot of people this past week when he beat Georgia, but this is a huge moment for both these programs, a huge moment for both these coaches, and a huge moment for both these teams in a lot of different ways. But let's get into this matchup, why don't we? Because the reality of this matchup is these teams are going to get after each other. These are two very, very aggressive, very disciplined, very fast teams on the defensive and offensive side of the ball, and you'll find offensively, they're going to run at your face. That's the way they play football. Whether it's Jadarian Price or Jeremiah Love, who we will talk about probably tomorrow, give you a full update on his health. Feels like he is going to go in this game. Don't know how close to 100% he'll be, but we'll see if we get a little bit more information today, and we can definitely pass that on right before the game tomorrow. But both these defenses, top 5 in points per game allowed, top 6 in yards per game allowed. Both offenses, top 16 in rush yards per game. this is going to be a rushing attack. This is going to be a slogfest. This is going to be a rock fight, no doubt in my mind. These two teams are going to get after each other very aggressively. The one difference is, what would the pass game possibly hold? That's could be the X factor, quote unquote, in this game. Penn State sits at 53rd in the country in pass yards per game, but 12th in yards per pass, which is a huge difference. They are very, very efficient when they throw the football. Then Notre Dame, 105th in pass yards per game, 85th in yards per pass. So not necessarily what you want from your pass game as you get deep into these games and play some elite defenses on the other side. So will that be the difference maker? Can Drew Aller make a couple more throws than maybe Riley Leonard can? Can those outside players for Notre Dame make a couple more plays than the Penn State outside players? Can they make a couple more plays than the Notre Dame group can? And will that be the difference in this game while the rush games play to a relative stalemate for the most part? But the quarterbacks are where you're going to want to start really every conversation, right? When we talk about these two offenses, both these guys have run it just incredibly well, and it's been with a lot of different help. You know, you have Tyler Warren on the Penn State side that's helping out Drew Aller a ton. He is open at all times. So whether it's Xavier Watts, or it's one of the linebackers, Jack Kaiser, guarding him, or it's one of the DBs like Jordan Clark, or one of those guys, Christian Gray, on the outside, he is open. That's the reality of Tyler Warren. We have learned that every single time that he has stepped on the field. He is open even when he's not open. It is going to be a really, really huge challenge for them to stop him, and then Drew Aller is going to find number 44 and throw it up just a couple of times. I can almost promise you that's going to happen because it works a whole lot. And the big question for that is, you have Tyler Warren, you have Mitchell Evans, two of the best tight ends in the country going at it. That will be huge parts of this pass game. The wide receiver group, I would very much lean towards Penn State, at least from a grandiose perspective. What's going on, Anthony? Nice to see you. But Trey Wallace, Omari Evans, Julian Fleming, and a couple more guys just feel like a little bit more than, say, a Jaden Greathouse and Bo Collins and Jordan Faison, all of these players on the outside for Notre Dame that have been stepping up at different moments throughout this title run. They're not necessarily to the level of, say, a Trey Wallace would be, or say an Omari Evans would be. So I think there's a moment where you're going to have to find someone to make some big-time plays. And we're talking about it right here, Anthony. I mean, there's a moment where maybe a freshman needs to step up and make a huge play. Maybe someone we haven't talked about needs to make a big play. And we talked about a freshman yesterday with Luke Reynolds for Penn State. Maybe that's the guy that makes the big-time play for this team, and maybe that's the difference in this game. The reality is, it's going to be margins, one way or the other. Someone's going to win this game, not because they, threw 4 50-yard touchdowns like Ohio State did against Oregon. No one's going to win this game because they ran for 400 yards. They're going to win this game because they fought the battle, they won the war of attrition, and then they made that one play. They made that one game-changing play at the late in the game, whether it's offensive or defensive. They made that one play. They fought that one extra inch that the other team was not willing to fight. And that's the way I love football, if I'm being totally honest with you. It might not be a scoring fest. I can almost promise you it will not be a scoring fest, but you got Katron Allen and Nick Singleton going at Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. You have Riley Leonard against Drew Aller. You have two head coaches that are looking for that big moment in the sun, and you have some of the best play callers you could possibly ask for on both sides of the ball for this game. So it's going to be special to watch this one unfold. I can absolutely promise you that. Andy Kotelnicki against Al Golden is as good as it gets. And hopefully Al Golden is totally done away with his Penn State love from when he played there some years ago. But at the end of the day, that's going to be an incredible matchup. On the other side, Tom Allen against Mike Denbrock is about as good as it gets. Two very, very experienced guys, and it's going to be awesome to watch this one. It's going to be elite execution is going to win this game. Both these teams want to do roughly the same thing. Penn State with a couple more ers and ahs added to their offense, but they very much want to be on attack mode. It is going to be a moment where someone's just going to have to execute at that little bit of a higher level, and someone's going to make that difference. And possessions are going to be at a premium. Execution is going to win this game. There's no doubt about that. But the question, I think there is a real reality where you get into these games with, say, Drew Aller and Tyler Warren and a couple of these other guys. You got to wonder, is this the last time they really put on their jerseys? And I don't necessarily want to speculate in that direction. I see where you're going with that, Anthony, but I do think the reality is all of those guys. Drew Aller has said he's coming back for 2025. I've talked about that a little bit. If he rolls the next two games, I would be a little bit surprised if he went in, but we'll talk about that. Well, definitely something we'll break down. It's something that all these players have to worry about as they go into this. Is this the last time I'm going to put on this jersey, and how am I going to play when I get out there? But let's get some players to watch here. And if you're not picking Kaytron Allen, I don't know what you're picking. 134 yards against Boise State, and more important than anything else is when you talk about a game that's going to be an absolute ground and pound, absolute slugfest type game, you need the enforcer, and that is the enforcer. Number 13 for Penn State is the guy that is going to meet a Donovan Hinish, or is going to meet a Jack Kaiser, or is going to meet one of those guys, like Xavier Watts, in the hole, and they're going to get blown back, and they're going to get a little bit surprised, and they're going to say, oh no, we might have a little bit of a fight on our hands. So Kaytron Allen is the enforcer the same way Jadarian Price is on the Notre Dame side. It is going to be a huge piece of this game. Then Jalen Reed, kind of an interesting player to throw out here, but the way that I look at this game is if Penn State at any point in this game gets up 10, 20, or I don't want to say 20, 10, 14 points, I think you're in a position where Riley Leonard's got to make a play, and he's probably going to have to make a play over the middle of the field because him throwing outside the numbers has not necessarily been his strength. That's where Jalen Reed becomes involved. That's where that one big-time play that we've been talking about can really take effect. And really, this can happen at any point. Doesn't have to be when Notre Dame's down 14 or anything crazy. It can happen at the very beginning of the game where he just makes that one little mistake, and Jalen Reed takes full advantage. He had a sack against Boise State. He's the backstop of this defense, and I think he's one of those guys, whether it's in run support or making that one big pick at the late in this game, he is going to be heard from tomorrow. And we talked about him yesterday, Anthony. Mitchell Evans is someone we're going to have to see in this game one way or the other. This past game for Notre Dame has really struggled at different times. He's been playing really, really solid football. He's been blocking very, very well. He's been doing things that don't necessarily show up on the stat sheet, but are very, very important to winning. The thing about that is, he hasn't had his game. He hasn't had the game that I expected from him, frankly. I think at the beginning of the year, I picked him to win the Mackey Award. I think he is absolutely fantastic and absolutely will be at the NFL level, but at the end of the day, he has not had his game yet. He has not taken over a game yet. He's going to have to a certain extent in this one. Jordan Faison is going to get blanketed in a lot of different ways by A.J. Harris, by Jalen Kimber. He's got to step up in a big way and be the player that a lot of us saw him as being this entire year. And then Donovan Hinish. If you don't have Riley Leonard, you need that defensive tackle to step up huge. This guy is a monster. 3 tackles and 1 sack against Boise State, and he is going to be the center of that defense. Now, Howard Cross is going to help him out a whole lot, but Howard Cross has had a little bit of an injury bug going around the last couple of games, so it might just be number 41 that has to make a name for himself, that has to take over this game, and he is more than capable of doing that. An absolute beast that tore up Georgia. Cannot imagine he's going to be any less excited for this game. But some keys to the game. Dude, Luke Reynolds is so much fun to watch, and I think it's one of those things where you play in a 12 personnel set, right? You have the running back, and then you have the 2 tight ends. Everyone's keying in on number 44, right? Everyone's looking at Tyler Warren and saying, we cannot let him beat us. Luke Reynolds can beat you plenty fine. I think he's going to be super fun to watch, and definitely a guy that I cannot wait for in this game, and especially in 2025. Cannot wait to see what he can do. But for this game, the keys to the game for Notre Dame: win first down. If you stay in front of the sticks, if you can get 4 yards, 4 yards, 4 yards, and just stay on that pace for the entirety of the game, there are very few teams in the country that are going to be able to beat Notre Dame because of what they do on the margins. They are so good at winning the margins, not getting a ton of penalties. That was a little bit of a problem against Georgia, but overall has not really been a problem this year. Do not turn the ball over. They make a number of great coaching decisions throughout the game with Marcus Freeman. If they win first down, if they can stay in front of the sticks throughout this game and go on 12-play, 13-play drives, it is going to be really hard for Penn State to keep up in this game, and it's going to be really hard for that defense to not get tired at some point, and then Jeremiah Love breaks a 98-yard touchdown. That is what this team is capable of. That is what they're built off of, and they have to do it in this game. And then load the box. I understand that there's a couple of playmakers on the back end for Penn State. I understand Omari Evans is playing great football. I totally get that Tyler Warren is a monster, and you got to worry about him. I'm not arguing that, but the reality is this running back duo will beat you. No 2 ways about it. Kaytron Allen and Nick Singleton will take over a game, and they will bury you if you let them. Stack the box. Trust your guys on the back end to make some plays. You have great defenders on the back end with Christian Gray, with Jordan Clark, with Xavier Watts that can make a ton of plays on the back end, and maybe you'll get beat a couple of different times for 20-yard gains or for 25-yard gains. But if you can slow down that run game and put it all on Drew Allar's shoulders, it's going to be really tough for that guy to not make a couple of mistakes. It's going to be really tough for that guy to just keep his head straight. So I would lean towards just stop that run, lean on that at least early in this game, and then maybe you can, get a little bit back into coverage once you feel like you've kind of imposed your will just a little bit on this offensive line. And then unleash the pass rush. Drew Aller is such a fantastic player. He can do just about everything you want him to do, and that's a reason why a lot of people in the NFL world are pushing for him to go to the draft after this year. But the reality is, him with protection is downright scary. Tuihalamaka, Donovan Hinnish, all of those guys have to get after him in a hurry, and then we've seen those mistakes come. Against Ohio State, against Michigan, the biggest thing is people were in his face pretty much every single time. He's going to probably have to deal with at least some of that against Notre Dame, but they got to make it really tough on the relatively young kid still in this moment. And then for Penn State, the pass protection. We just talked about it, how dangerous he is with pass protection. If they can handle their business up front, that offensive line, whether it's run blocking or pass protection, they're going to win this game, plain and simple. Because the reality is, you give Drew Aller time to see the field, time to really look at everything going on and make a throw, he's going to make that throw. He is downright elite at putting the ball where he wants to. We saw it twice in the Boise State game. We will see it plenty throughout his career and probably in this game at some point as well. So it's going to be really, really interesting to watch what happens. And Anthony, you make a great point. We just talked about Notre Dame trying to break down the Penn State attack. It's going to be a little bit harder for Penn State to break down the Notre Dame attack, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I leaned away from that just a little bit. Now, you do have to force passing downs. There's no doubt about that. You have to put Riley Leonard the ball in his hands and say, go make a throw. Go make a throw into really, really tight windows against Jalen Kimber, against A.J. Harris, against Jalen Reed. You have to be able to force him to do that. So that does mean slowing them down at least a little bit, trying to find a way to, especially Riley Leonard. I think those two running backs are going to be nightmares to deal with in their own respect, but I think you shut down number 13 in the run game. You're going to have a lot of success being able to shut down the other two, and then a lot of things happen very quickly. And then the final thing, stay even. Penn State has really rolled through the first two rounds. They've rolled through a number of different games other than that Ohio State and Oregon game. This has the potential to put you in that type of spot where Notre Dame gets up 7-0. You look up at the scoreboard and say, it's happening again. We're playing a team that's just a little bit too tough, a little bit too elite, a little bit too talented, a little bit too fast, and we're going to come up on the wrong side of this. I think this team is very mentally tough, but that thing will pop into their head at some point, and they have to stay even throughout this game because they are going to take multiple punches in this game, kind of unlike they took against Boise State and SMU. But overall, going to be an incredible game. Cannot wait for this one to unfold, and I'll be totally honest, I've been wrong about Notre Dame all year. I picked against you again, guys. I apologize, but I picked against you against USC, I believe. I believe I picked against you in a number of different spots throughout this year, so this should make you feel okay. In Penn State, I've been relatively right about you, so I think I should appease both fan bases here, but the way that I look at this game is a slogfest, it is a slogfest, it is a slogfest, and then Drew Aller makes one throw. He makes one big-time throw to Omari Evans or to Trey Wallace, and it totally changes this game. It totally changes the complexion of this game. Penn State takes a, let's say, 10-point lead at that point, 20-10, and then Notre Dame is scrambling just a little bit down the stretch of this game. I'm going to take Penn State to win, and I'm going to take one pass from Drew Aller to be the real reason that they win this game. Drew Aller becomes a little bit of a legend. The NFL calls become a little bit more big, and Penn State moves on to the national title. James Franklin breaks through that glass ceiling, and man, I would love to see a Notre Dame 31, Penn State 30. That would be an incredible game and definitely one that I would love to see. I'm thinking more of a slogfest than maybe you be thinking, Anthony, but at the end of the day, both will be incredible games and cannot wait for that one to unfold. Some coach is going to get a ton of respect this time around, but went a little bit long there. They definitely deserve a little bit of a long segment here, but we'll break down the Cotton Bowl right after this. We'll get into Ohio State and Texas, and that one is one that people feel pretty confident about. I think it's a little bit closer than some people are expecting, but we'll talk about it right after this, so stick with us.